Education wasn't always like this. There was a time when learning meant watching others, asking questions, understanding the world, and developing your place in it. But over time, it changed. It became a system. The first large-scale, state-run education system in its modern form appeared in Prussia in the early 19th century. Its goal was clearly defined: to produce citizens who would follow orders, obey authority, and maintain discipline. The authoritarian state didn't need philosophers, it needed functionaries. It needed soldiers and factory workers. This is where the familiar structure came from: dividing children by age, fixed schedules, ringing bells, centralized curriculum, and a strict hierarchy of teacher over student. One of the key thinkers behind this model was Johann Gottlieb Fichte. In 1809, he wrote, "Education should mold the character in such a way that the individual simply cannot will otherwise than what the government wants them to will." This wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the blueprint. The model was efficient. It produced obedient workers, disciplined soldiers, and predictable bureaucrats. No questions, no resistance, just compliance. Soon this system spread to the US, the UK, and eventually around the world. Standardization became the ideal, and the purpose of education quietly shifted from developing independent minds to manufacturing reliable units. As industrialization grew, this model became a natural extension of the factory. Education turned into a conveyor belt. You enter as a child, you leave as a product. Form became more important than substance. Grades became more important than understanding. Obedience became more important than thought. And over time, it only got worse. In most countries, one-size-fits-all curriculum is still the standard. Children are measured by test scores, not by creativity or emotional growth. Thinking is optional. Compliance is mandatory. The most dangerous part? Most people think this is normal. Few realize that school, in its current design, was never meant to liberate you. It was meant to control you. In the early 20th century, the factory became the dominant metaphor for how society should function. Everything was about scale, efficiency, control, and education was no exception. As industry demanded more labor, not more thinking, schools were redesigned to mirror the factory floor. Children sat in rows, just like workers. They followed bells, just like shifts. They were taught to follow instructions, stay in place, and never challenge authority. The content didn't matter as much as the structure. What mattered was that people knew their role and stayed in it. In the 1920s and 30s, standardized testing became a powerful tool for sorting students, not by their potential, but by how well they fit the mold. IQ tests, aptitude tests, multiple choice exams, all designed to classify, filter, and rank, not to teach or inspire. This wasn't about knowledge, it was about data, about reducing human complexity into measurable output. You weren't a mind, you were a score. And then came the Cold War. With the space race, science funding exploded. Governments wanted engineers, mathematicians, obedient minds, not philosophers, not critics. So schools began cutting programs in the arts, ethics, literature, anything that couldn't be quantified or militarized. The goal wasn't wisdom, it was utility. At the same time, corporations began to see education not as a public good, but as a pipeline, a tool to shape future employees. Business leaders started funding school boards, sponsoring curriculums, writing textbooks. They weren't interested in critical thinkers. They wanted reliability. People who would accept the rules of the economy without questioning them. Universities followed. Once institutions of knowledge, they slowly transformed into credential factories. By the 1980s and 90s, student debt became normal. Degrees became products. Education became an investment, not in your mind, but in your market value. It wasn't about becoming a better thinker. It was about becoming employable. And the price of employment was obedience. By the end of the 20th century, most of the world had adopted a model of education based not on curiosity, but on conformity. You were taught what to memorize, not what to ask. You were rewarded for quiet accuracy, not for original thought. And if you questioned the system itself, you were told, that's not on the test. Today, the results are visible everywhere. Millions of students go through school systems that were never designed to help them think, only to help them comply. They know how to memorize dates, repeat formulas, follow instructions. But they leave school not knowing how to manage money, how to navigate complex emotions, how to question what they're told. They were taught answers, but never how to find their own questions. We now live in a world of endless information, and yet a shortage of critical thought. A world where people scroll for hours but can't sit in silence, where they follow rules even if they make no sense, where initiative is rare and doubt is feared. Many young people feel lost, anxious, unprepared, not because they failed, but because the system worked exactly as it was meant to. It didn't fail to teach them, it succeeded in shaping them into something small, silent, and manageable. But there is another path. It begins where the curriculum ends. It begins when you start asking what no one gave you permission to ask. So if you've ever looked at your education and wondered, what was the point of all this? You're not alone. You were just paying attention.